Good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Mathis. I am Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women based here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to another edition of Millennial Entrepreneurs. And why do we do this series of webinars every month? Because we know that young women are not so much interested in having a job for a lifetime. They want to control their own destinies, and you can't blame them for that. As a matter of fact, we congratulate them for that. And that's why we're here presenting you cutting edge information that you can use to reach your own higher heights and higher goals. Tonight, we have a very special presenter. She's been with us before. Her ratings are always extraordinary. And we do encourage you when tonight's session is over, take a few minutes and fill out the evaluation form to make sure that these programs are meaningful for you. We also encourage you to consider joining the National Council of Negro Women. We just celebrated our 85th anniversary, 85 years since Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune founded NCNW to fight lynching. And if you think NCNW is an old-fashioned organization, think again, because there are a lot of parallels between fighting lynching in 1935 and making sure that Black Lives Matter in 2021. We will proceed to introduce Ms. Taryn Bushrod, who is our financial coach and leader for tonight's session. But before we do that, I would ask that Mr. Johannes, our Director of Communications, come on and give us a few tips about using GoToWebinar. Mr. Johannes.
Thank you, Ms. Mathis. Good evening. There are a couple things we'd like to point out to you. First of all, on the bottom of your screen, or if you're using a mobile device, on the drop-down menu, there's a button called Handouts. You can get a copy of information from GoToWebinar, as well as a short version of how to use GoToWebinar from NCNW, and also notes from tonight. So you don't have to take all notes. You can pay attention to the content. As well as there's a section called Questions. At the end of the program, please put your questions in there. And I ask you succinctly put your questions because we have to read them back so everybody can understand. On the top, you'll see an arrow, which is orange, where you can open and close your menu. And also there's a microphone. In the event that we can talk to you, we might ask one or two of you to actually speak for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johannes. And now it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce a young woman who is eminently qualified to give us advice this evening. Our subject is called the H.E.N.R.Y.s, and she will explain exactly what that H.E.N.R.Y. acronym stands for. But Taryn Bushrod has years of experience as a financial therapist, helping professional athletes improve their relationship with money and improving their spending habits. She's a 2018 Forbes Fellow. She's a Baltimore native who graduated from Morgan State University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in marketing. Not satisfied there, she went on to earn a Master's of Science degree in financial management while working as a contract specialist for the Defense Logistics Agency. She also holds a certificate in behavioral finance from Duke University. Her journey to becoming a money mindset coach began at an early age, listening to the teachings of sound money principles from her grandfather and her father. So she has both the experience, the background, and the educational credentials to lead us through an inspiring conversation tonight. After years of helping friends and family manage their funds, she decided it was time to help others learn what she had learned about something we all care about, and that is money. Ms. Taryn Bushrod, welcome.
Thank you so very much for having me.
It's our pleasure.
All right, so I'm assuming that I can go ahead and jump right into Uncle Henry.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As she mentioned, my name is Taryn Bushrod. I am a money mindset coach. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I actually live here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and Capitol Hill. Now, I say Uncle Henry jokingly, but that's actually not your uncle. H.E.N.R.Y. stands for high earner, not rich yet. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and give you more context, and we can get this show on the road. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
We see
Perfect.
your whole screen.
My whole screen. Now, there we go, the whole screen. So tonight's topic obviously is Henry, high earner, not rich yet. I'm going to do my absolute best to not be Speedy Gonzalez and, speak slowly. I do recognize that I can talk fast. So at any point, please make a comment or step in and say, can you slow down or repeat yourself? That's perfectly fine with me. So I am here to give you some money mindset hacks for the high earning millennials. We're going to start with a brief poll. I have 2 questions for you just to get engaged in the audience. If we can go ahead and start those polls, that would be great. So the first question is, I'd like to know a little bit about your background. Are you a full-time entrepreneur, a part-time entrepreneur? Do you have a side hustle, or are you still in the one source of income bucket? Okay. All right, this is good. This is good information. We can move on to the second poll. Now, this will help me determine how many Henrys we actually have on the line and who's an inspiring Henry, maybe, maybe not. So what are your yearly earnings? Are you 50,000 above, 100,000 above, 150,000 above, or 200,000 and above? Okay, okay. So I'll say this, the majority, 35, 45. All right, so it's about half and half. We have some inspiring Henrys and we have some people who fall in the Henry category by definition. So let me go ahead and get back to sharing my screen. All right, so we've already covered who I am. That's going to skip that part. So what are Henrys? Again, the acronym stands for high earner, not rich yet. Now, it sounds a little convoluted at first. It was a term that kind of made me go, Henry, am I a high earner? I don't think that I'm rich, right? Just conceptually, I don't feel like I'm rich. I don't live a lifestyle of the rich and famous or anything of that sort. But by definition, am I a Henry? So the first thing is an income requirement or earnings requirement. And for millennials, it's millennials who earn anywhere from 100 to 200,000. So if you are a 6-figure earner, millennial, by definition, you can fall into the Henry category. And I want to make that very distinct. I want that to stand out because it is a category. It doesn't necessarily define who you are. But if you want to understand if you yourself are a Henry, I'm going to go over some things that you can ask yourself, see if it applies to you, and it might lean you toward, yes, I am a Henry. No, I'm not quite a Henry, or I have some Henry tendencies. And which way do I want to go? Do I want to shy away from becoming a Henry, or do I want to move closer to a Henry? So one thing to ask yourself, are you a lover of luxury goods? And by luxury goods, I'm going to go ahead and say your designer labels, your high-end boutiques. I guess you can go ahead and say those high-value handbags for the lovely ladies. I know there's a big fuss about a Birkin bag and a Chanel bag and all of these things. Are you a lover of those things? Do they appeal to you? Do you have a high standard and high cost of living? Again, do you have a high standard and a high cost of living? And another thing to ask yourself, are you failing to save money? Those are 3 key indicators of a H.E.N.R.Y. Now, to bring this full circle, a H.E.N.R.Y. is someone who has high earnings. You have a potential to have a high net worth, but you fall in between the trappings of you want a luxurious and lavish lifestyle, but you also might have student loans or credit card debts, or you live in an area that just naturally has a high cost of living. It's not necessarily, you know how we say people are living beyond their means. It's not that scenario. You live in the DCs, the New Yorks, the LAs of the world, where it simply costs more to live in comparison to other cities. So when you find yourself in that in-between phase, but you aren't willing to sacrifice luxury in order to advance your financial future, coupled with that income earnings or that earning potential over $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, those are key indicators of a H.E.N.R.Y. Now, some other things that I want you to be aware about is H.E.N.R.Y.s are the ideal client that luxury brands market to. For instance, well, for this particular reason, you have the income or you have the earnings to purchase these items that they sell, but it's not necessarily affordable to you. And by affordable, meaning you are trading off something of future value, i.e., your net worth in the future, your ability to save more money or invest more money or pay off debt. That is the trade-off that you are making for that purchase that they are enticing you with social media marketing, those ads that you see. You may have Googled something and then lo and behold, you're checking your email and you see something on the side, or you go to social media. It could be on a completely different device, and all of a sudden you're seeing an ad for that item or something similar. One key thing I will point out is it is very good to search for things in private or incognito mode. It will save you a lot of heartache, and it will allow you to make conscious decisions versus a decision of excitement and emotion. Now, before I get into the money mindset hacks, I always do things in 3s. I guess 3 might be my favorite number. I'm not exactly sure because I feel like 2 is, but sometimes things are just better in 3s, right? But I'll say a quick story. I like to tell stories. So I just came back from Costa Rica a few days ago, and going into the trip, I had an ideal amount of money that I was going to spend. Before I agreed, everything was laid out. This is how much we were going to spend. This is housing, transportation, etc. Now, obviously, you build in a buffer for your unknowns. There was excursions. There were, other extras that came about. But I am a very diligent person when it comes to funding. It kind of irks me to not know exactly how much I should earmark. So I will say this, a trip that I earmarked to cost me about $1,500, including flight accommodations and extras, cost me almost $2,500. And while I did not plan for that, I have to figure out now as a conscious decision, where am I taking this money from? What is my trade-off going to be? Is it coming from the travel savings account that I already had set up, which I was really saving for something that was going to cost me a lot more money towards the end of the year? Or am I going to make some trade-offs in terms of my mini weekend escapades? Or am I going to forego some things, maybe some brunches? I personally have not made that decision. That's something that I've been sitting with because I'm in my vacation after the vacation, because it was a very long trip for taxing mentally for a few short days. Now, what I will say is when I sit down, I'm going to make that conscious decision, and 9 times out of 10, technically this was a business trip, so I can expense it, but I do my best not to operate from that mindset because I don't think it's a healthy habit, especially when you have money coming in and it's not necessarily has to be earmarked or set aside for something specific. So I'm going to do some deep thinking. And if anybody wants to know what I decide, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll probably do a story about it on Saturday or Sunday to kind of recap the financial scenario. But I mention all of that because luxury travel is another key indicator of a H.E.N.R.Y. And there are people who they will set certain things aside to travel and have certain experiences. But then there are people who won't set anything aside and they want everything all at once, no matter what the trade-off is. So here are some things that I would like you to think about when it comes to kind of shifting your mind so that you don't fall into the trappings of a H.E.N.R.Y. Now, the first thing is to automate your savings. Remember earlier I said an indicator is you are failing at saving or you fail to save money. And sometimes we use fail and we internalize it negatively. Sometimes you just really have to sit down and say to yourself, where can I save money or how can I save money? And if you are spending lavishly or you're enjoying a nice, comfy lifestyle, 9 times out of 10, you can find something that you can save. And once you do, automate that. And granted, it might not be, you know, the grand savings that you want, or you might not be investing thousands of dollars a month because that's what you have allocated, but you're starting a habit, you're starting a healthy habit, and that's what's most important, to kind of transition yourself from spending mindlessly. I like to call it mindless spending. Someone else may call it reckless. I'm just going to call it mindless because sometimes, you know, we just get into a mood and we just want to spend. I know me, my spending season happens with warm weather. It's the end of spring, summer, I spend a lot. Winter and fall, I don't really spend anything because those are just months that I like to hibernate. So automate your savings, clear your plate of that. That's one key way to shift your mindset. Now, the second thing I want you to do is to take inventory of your finances, your purchases, your lifestyle, and then what's important to you. Because luxury travel could be important to you. Luxury goods could be important to you. High ticket brunches could be important to you. I don't know. I would assume a lot of you are in the DC area. I would say DC is a prime area for a good weekend brunch. So some of those things might be important to you. But once you identify those things that are important, you can see where you can scale up and where you can scale back. Once you understand what you want to prioritize, you're putting yourself in a completely different lens because now you can see clearer. Now you can make more conscious decisions. It doesn't matter that, you know, you want $1,000 bag versus $100 bag. None of that matters. It's what's important to you and how you are designing your finances to set yourself up for future success. So again, take inventory, of everything that you're doing, lifestyle, and what's most important, and you will set yourself on a new trajectory of understanding and maybe not fall into the trappings of a Henry. You can be a conscious Henry, like a conscious consumer. And the third tip that I want you to do, which is probably the most important aside from automating your savings, is take time to think about why you want the things that you do. So I'm gonna say it again. Take time to think about why you want and do the things that you do. Oftentimes we start with, I don't know. But then that takes you to a deeper level of reflection. Why don't you know? Ask yourself why again. And then answers will start to appear. And it could be as simple as because I want to. And then once you settle in because I want to, that level of stubbornness will kind of dissipate, and then another layer of why will come into place. So these are things that you want to do to kind of clear the air between you, your bank account, your finances, and becoming a Henry or walking away from the Henry mentality. So that pretty much concludes my presentation point. I would love to engage you all in questions. I wish I could see you all on screen, but unfortunately I can't. However, I have my eye on the questions box. Please feel free, open-ended, and we can kind of go through some scenarios, or if you have a specific situation, please feel free to drop it in the questions area and we can engage further. And don't be shy, please don't be shy. And if you don't want to make it for everyone to see, then feel free to send me a DM on Instagram as well.
I'm sure we will have questions. Let me begin by thanking you for reminding us. I had never heard that term Henry before. And when I saw the description of what it was like how to enjoy luxury goods if you're a high earner, but you're not saving. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. So thank you for clarifying that. I guess my question is, what do you say to yourself? Because I can get that bag today, but saving for my retirement might take me the rest of my working career. What do I say to myself to say, okay, do you really need that bag? Do you really want it? Is there something you want more? What's the self-talk that we ought to be doing with ourselves?
The number one thing is why. Like, what appeals to you? And then where did you get the thought from? Was it you saw somebody with it? Did you see an advertisement for it? Did you hear it in a song? These are things that kind of stimulate your senses. And then you can, once you figure out why you want something, then you can make a conscious decision of, yes, I really want it, or no, I would rather spend my money on something else. And it's not necessarily you're saying no to spending and yes to saving. It's finding that happy medium. It could be saying no to the designer bag, but yes to the travel experience.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Do we have questions?
We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first question is how do I move into that 100 grand earnings so I can become a Henry?
Well, I would caution you on not wanting to become a Henry, but I would say you want to become a high earner. That you have to take inventory of what you're passionate about, where you currently are in your career, what is kind of the normal trajectory of your career path. Are you in a lane that if you work a certain amount of years that you're willing to invest into your career that will get you that earning potential? Then these are all kind of self-assessment questions that you have to ask. You might need a career change. You might need a change in your side hustle or your business. Definitely adding an additional source of income. I won't go into the 7 streams of income theory, but definitely finding something else to substantiate what you currently earn on your full-time job can certainly help get you to that 6-figure mark sooner.
All right, next question. When you speak of automating savings, do you recommend apps like Acorns?
I don't recommend against apps like Acorn, but when I say automate savings, if you have the option to allocate funds directly from your paycheck, like an allotment, I would go ahead and set that up into, I want to call it a high interest savings account. They are technically still that, but obviously with everything going on in the financial landscape, they are no longer truly high interest, but definitely still opening one of those accounts. The interest rates change often, just like normal prime interest rates. So setting that up is probably the best thing. Acorns and I think Digit, and maybe there's something else where if you spend something and it's not to the dollar, it rounds the purchase up to the dollar, but saves the whatever the difference is. Those are good starters, but to really hit the nail on the head, you want to make sure things are going directly to your savings.
Okay, next question. Is being a Henry bad? And if so, what's the opposite?
I would say being a Henry is, I won't say it's bad. I will say it's a matter of self-awareness, and it's not a place where you want to stay. I think you want to get to a point of being a high earner and having a high net worth. And obviously your net worth is just your assets and your liabilities. So if you make X amount of dollars and you have expenses that exceed what you're making, 9 times out of 10, you have a negative net worth, not including your retirement. Hopefully you are contributing to your retirement, but it's definitely not a launch pad. Like, you don't want to remain a Henry. Like, I probably can say I could fall into a Henry lifestyle at peaks and valleys, but it's not somewhere where I want to actually rest my laurels.
What are some healthy habits of high earning people that Henrys could/should incorporate?
Definitely, if you are, I won't even say if you're a full-time employee, maxing out your retirement savings. I will say this, I recently transitioned into this belief. I always move from the standpoint of I'm going to contribute the maximum that my company will match to my 401k. But the difference of what I might consider free money that I'm not utilizing to pay off debt, I can invest myself. I have since elevated my thinking to maxing out my retirement across the board for the knowledge that I now have of the tax implications. It is a lot more friendly tax-wise when you max out your 401k than when you just contribute to receive the free money that your company will give you.
Okay. When you automate your savings, say of $1,000, would it be wise to invest that and start saving for the next 1,000?
It depends on your money goals. I am still a firm believer. Some people are not, but I'm a firm believer in emergency savings. Whatever you determine that amount to be, I do think 2020 and the beginning part of 2021 has taught pretty much everybody the importance of having some free cash. Now, if you've say that your emergency savings is $5,000, all you need is $5,000. After you have that $5,000 and you are comfortable investing, which means you are comfortable taking a win or a loss, then by all means start to invest that extra. But if you are not comfortable in your investing acumen and you have hesitations, I would go ahead and put that extra towards maxing out your 401k before you go into self-investing strategies.
Now this question has 3 parts. The first part, can you recommend any high interest rate savings accounts?
What by definition, that where we are now, I think we're probably at 1.2. We were at some point around 3%, but those would be the Marcus account by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, ALLY, and oh my goodness, I can see the emblem, but I can't think of the name. But those are my top 2 recommendations. If I think of the third, then I will definitely bring it up.
Are money market savings the way to go?
No.
That's correct. No.
No.
And the last part is 0.4% a good rate?
I would need more context. If that's on a savings account, then no.
I believe it was a part of high interest rate savings accounts. I believe they're referring to that. Nope.
A similar question, I guess it's the line of questioning for this evening. With regards to a Roth IRA, can we max out previous years if we didn't meet the max?
Now, I am not a tax professional, so I cannot adequately answer that question. I do believe the answer is no, but again, you would have to consult a tax professional.
I believe this person was following up on the MMSA, the money market savings.
Okay.
Keep bringing the questions.
Yes, please. This is the good part.
What specifically did your father and grandfather teach you about money?
Oh, well, my grandfather was very old-fashioned. He taught me to save 5 cents of every dollar. I know now people will say 10% or 10 cents of every dollar. But as I was young, maybe 3 or 4, he would give me money in change to make sure that I put 5 cents into my piggy bank until I created that habit where he would actually give me dollars and feel comfortable that by the end of the week, any money that I was given, I would put my 5% aside. And then probably around 6, yeah, I think maybe around 5 or 6, I started going to the bank with him. So I opened my own account right there, and it was my responsibility to make sure I was staying up to date on the money that was in my account. If somebody gave me money, Christmas, all of those things, birthday, holidays, savings bonds. Is that what they're called? Savings bonds, I think. Yeah, all of those things. That's pretty much how he lived. He was very old-fashioned. But as I got older, I realized he was also an American Express guy. And I just recently became an American Express gal a few years ago. And I didn't really make that connection until I was like, oh my goodness, I remember my grandfather had that green card, and that was the staple American Express card. And as for my father pretty much stepped in with investing. He stepped in with teaching me certain principles when I started car shopping on my own, letting me know that the purchase price of the car is not the monthly expense. So making sure that my total car expense doesn't exceed 30% of what I was making. Obviously, at the time, I probably didn't heed that advice fully, but it worked itself out. Eventually, when I made that last car purchase, I do not own a car currently. I haven't owned a car in almost 5 years. But when I made my last car purchase, eventually it became close to the 30% of my income. But starting out, that car was 50%, about 50% of my earnings.
Thank you.
Here's another question for you. I hear that the path to obtaining individual wealth is through the stock market. Do you have any personal suggestions or any information about this?
I think there are a lot of factors. Your risk tolerance is one of them. Um, your diligence, how your money goals are, how your lifestyle is designed. Yes, the stock market is one key way of creating wealth, but it's not the only way. And I also am, I believe in multiple ways. Like I could never fully put everything in one place, if that makes sense. So as I mentioned, maxing out my 401k, yes, I do max out my 401k now, but I also have a brokerage account where I'm doing individual investing. I am putting forth the level of effort to learn how to trade options, but I also have a keen interest in real estate investment. So it's not just one thing. Some people are one-dimensional. They won't care, or they won't entertain maxing out their 401k for whatever reason. Maybe the tax benefits don't matter to them, etc. But they are strictly a stock market investor. They might have a small amount of money in savings, but they believe that the majority of their capital should be in the market, and they could max out the highs and they can ride out the lows. That's not me.
Any tips or tricks for the person becoming a high earner for the first time, aside from maxing out retirement investment? What else should someone with new money do with their finances to avoid being rich broke?
That is a great question, and it makes me smile because one of the key things that I talk about is your relationship with money. And as you continue to grow into earning more money, I think the most important thing you can do is understand your relationship with money. That kind of plays into that point about taking inventory of your finances and your purchases and your lifestyle and the things that are important to you. But to take it to another level, this is where you look into your attitudes, your values, and your behaviors towards money. And it will point to things that you've learned growing up. Like, what are some of the things that kind of stick out to you? Are you seeing yourself repeating habits that maybe you've witnessed from your parents or your grandparents or anyone else that had a big influence over your life? So think about your attitudes, your values, and your behaviors towards money, and let that shape your future as you continue to earn more money. And if you want more info, just feel free to DM me. I can talk all day about that.
Do you have a formula for saving a certain amount of money on a weekly, monthly basis, regardless of your income?
I do. Whoever asks this question, they can go ahead and Google the 50-30-20 money management plan or money management system. It will give you a lot of information on how that effectively works. My numbers aren't 50-30-20 considering how my life is set up, but I can just give you the category. So 50% goes towards your living essentials, 30% goes towards your flexible spending, and 20% goes towards your financial goals, whether that's debt repayment, savings, and investing. But those percentages are adjusted based on your lifestyle. So again, I mentioned some of us live in just high cost areas, the New Yorks, the DCs, the LAs. 9 times out of 10, your living essentials exceed 50% of your earnings. So kind of making those adjustments and figuring out what works best for you. I'm currently at maybe, I would probably have to recheck my numbers from it's a new year, it's a new quarter, but I'm at about 60% on my financial goals, and everything else kind of falls on the other side. But yes, 50-30-20 money management plan. Find your percentages that work best for you and your current expenses, and automate that savings number from there.
What do those numbers refer to? 20, 50, 30, 20.
So 50% goes towards your living expenses. That's your mortgage, your rent, your electricity. I personally put my cell phone because that is a living essential. I can't live without it. Your 30% is your flexible spending. So hopefully your dry cleaner bill, if you had one, has gone down, and you're enjoying the luxury of working from home. Your gas, your insurance. What else fluctuates? Your groceries. So those things would go into your flexible spending. If you have any upcoming expenses, like if you're traveling or eating out, those all go into your flexible spending. And then that 20% is earmarked for financial goals. So again, that's your debt repayment. If you have credit cards or student loans that you're paying on, or line of credits. If you are aggressively savings or just have a small savings goal, and your investment goals.
Thank you.
How do you stay disciplined with your savings?
Oh, I set it and forget it. I think that was like an infomercial or something, but that's me. I set it and forget it. And then I think something that you can do if you want to incentivize yourself is like set a date on your calendar. Maybe it's monthly or bi-monthly, and go and check that account where you've set your money and forgot, and you're like, oh. And then the habit just becomes more exciting because you just figure out like what you want to do with it. So for instance, me personally, I have 3 different savings goals that I'm currently after, and they all are automated. So I have my travel savings account, I have my emergency savings account, and then I have my housing investing savings account.
I
Do you
believe
recommend written budget?
You said, say that again?
Do you recommend a written budget or tracking on a spreadsheet your expenses? What do you reduce to writing?
I personally recommend finding what works best for you, because everybody is not an Excel spreadsheet person. Everybody doesn't work best with pen and paper. Some people work best with an app. I think the most important thing is to figure out what works best for you. Set that framework in place. So for instance, the money management plan, the thing that I like most about it that I follow is it allows me to kind of organize my finances without thinking about it. I have everything automated. Clients that I used to work with, that was some of the things that I recommended, to automate things. Then you automatically know what you have left to what I call your fund or your play money, because your living essentials you can't get away from. And if you're determined for your financial goals, those are also set. So if you have those things set, they're automated. You don't have to think about it. The only thing that you have to think about is what you want to do with the money that you have left over.
All right, we have a question that just came in. If you have high student loan debt, should you prioritize knocking that down aggressively over growing a savings, or is it more about balance?
It's more about balance. I will say, in terms of savings, once you reach your emergency savings goal, and nothing else changes. For example, your living expenses don't increase after you've met that goal, then you can take that extra money and do other things financially, whether that's put more money towards investing or put more money towards paying off of student loans.
I believe that was the last question.
Great.
Oh, nope. As soon as I said that, two others popped up.
Okay, no worries.
Have you ever thought about the FIRE movement? I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so the FIRE movement, it stands for Financially Independent, Retire Early. I think that's the acronym, but that's the concept. Like, you have so much financial freedom, you've set your life up, and it doesn't necessarily mean you make an exuberant amount of money. You've just figured out what works best where you can live off of passive income. I have thought about that. I applaud anybody who does it and can do it. I certainly have a retirement goal, which is probably not retirement age, it's more or less fire your boss age. But I haven't necessarily reached the FIRE movement yet.
Do you have any specific advice for independent contractors, i.e. individual 401k versus Roth IRA?
I think it depends on the business structure, what works best for tax advantages. I personally have an S Corp, and I decided to go with a solo 401k versus individual 401 Roth. Wait, I did a solo 401k opposed to an individual Roth IRA. But there are a few factors. Hopefully you have a good tax preparer, but I know one of the factors is your entity structure, with if you're S Corp, LLC, sole proprietor, as well as the tax bracket that you'll fall in.
If you have high student loan debt, should you prioritize knocking that down aggressively over a savings, or is it more about balance?
Now, we answered that already, but that's okay. I'll repeat the answer. My answer was reach your emergency savings goal first before you begin to aggressively pay off the student loan.
What has been the biggest impact of your financial goals?
Positive or negative, I'm not sure what direction they want, but I'll just speak from my heart. My biggest impact has been my credit card debt. A few years ago, I was diagnosed bipolar, and I felt that travel therapy was the best therapy for me. And I was also being targeted at work. So I decided to take off the full amount of FMLA, which was 4 months without pay. 12 weeks without pay. And I traveled, I put things on my credit card. I ran up a lot of debt. And it was my second time getting into a major, what I would consider major debt. So what I initially thought was major debt was nowhere near what happened after my diagnosis and my travel therapy. And so that has pretty much been the thing that has set me apart. I actually get into arguments with my financial advisor a lot right now because, one, I just officially hired him from the amount of money that he saved me with, forcing me, number one, to max out my 401k. So that's another reason why I'm a huge proponent, because I see literally the financial benefits. But I honestly have the amount of money to pay off all of my credit card debt, but it's just something neurological within me that will not allow me to do it. I'm just utilizing earned income from investing versus earned income from my paycheck. And we get into an argument, but that's pretty much my defining money moment right now.
This person says, thanks for being so transparent and sharing your stories. What has been the biggest impact of your financial goals?
My biggest impact right now is, I don't know. I feel like everything's so automated, and I have money coming from a few different places. I don't really have a direct answer. I do apologize.
Any recommendations for what to do when you're done paying off your credit cards? They tend to drop the limit and then it drops your credit score when you don't use it.
That's a really good question. I am not the credit expert. I honestly don't know. If that person, whoever it is, if they want to send me an email or DM them, I have the perfect person that can ask them that they can ask for strategies, and they don't charge. I say that up front because some people want to charge you just to talk to them for 20 minutes, and I don't agree with that. But yeah, I don't have a direct answer for that.
So what are your feelings on CDs?
Throw them away. They're just extinct as the actual disc. I said that jokingly, but also seriously. I think that the financial incentives is just not there to put your money in a CD unless you literally struggle with being resilient and being dedicated to your financial goals. If you are transfer out of my savings to my check-ins person still, you haven't broken that threshold, then maybe a CD is something that you want to consider. But it's probably down there with a money market account, the last thing that I would recommend.
This person asks, sometimes when you pay off your credit cards, the company will close your account. I'm sorry.
That's okay, because that does bring another point. If I'm not mistaken, by law, they have to contact you before they close it. I know laws change all the time, but that was the last thing I remember, and it was more or less an opportunity for you to make a purchase and then pay it off. One thing that you can do is put yourself on something, let's just say, if you're worried about the limits being dropped, or if you're worried about them being closed from non-usage, let's just say you got 3 cards and you know that one will remain open. You don't have any worries, but let's just say the other 2, you have some concerns. Make one for gas, one for groceries. Those are things you're going to buy anyway. Spend it, pay it off at the end of the month. But I feel as though if you reach that point of having concerns of paying it off, or of it being closed, or the limit being reduced, then you can be diligent in actually utilizing those cards for those specific reasons and then paying it off in full when the bill is due.
How do you shop around for a solo 401k?
I just use the existing banking relationship, brokerage relationship that I have, which is TD Ameritrade. But it's really about the relationship that you want to have or establish with a financial institution, or one that you already have, because it's not like someone else will give you a better rate than another. That's not how they work.
Any more questions? I understand that last question because I guess most of my 401ks have come as a part of the company or institution I'm working for. I've never thought about getting a 401k outside of that.
Yes, multiple investment vehicles. Yeah.
Well, I think that is the last question, and we're about to approach 8 p.m.
Well, I'd like to bring this session to a close by thanking our speaker for being candid and also for being knowledgeable and for pulling a good trick on me about how to be a high income earner and not rich yet. I thought you were going to be telling people how to get coupons to buy pocketbooks and that kind of stuff. I'm glad it wasn't that, because what you gave us was much more practical and sound. And so thank you for sharing your experiences and your gifts with us. And we encourage you to come back and visit with us again. And I encourage our attendees tonight, many of whom are still on the call, to visit Taryn Bushrod. Where can they find you if they want to know more about your practice?
The best way to find me is Instagram. My DMs are always open. It's ITS World. It's Taryn's World.
It's Taryn's World. Well, thank you, Taryn, for sharing your world with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And we encourage all of you who are listening, please take the survey. Tell us how much you enjoyed this program, what kinds of programs you'd like to see in the future. And please could visit www.ncnw.org and sign up to become a member of NCNW. We appreciate you, and that's the way we're able to bring these programs. Is there anything else, Mr. Johannes or Ms. Allen? Thank you both for your support tonight and always for these programs and activities.
I would say only that we too are on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, NCNW headquarters.
And now something called Clubhouse too, right?
Yes, we are on Clubhouse. That's our new thing.
As much as I try to keep up, I can't keep up with it. But you can find us if you put NCNW into your Google search engine, you will find multiple ways to connect with us, including 310 community-based sections. One of them is surely near you. Thank you all, and good night.
Good night.